This is my copy of Eragon. I find it extremely comforting to have this book on my shelf, especially in the condition it's in. I first got it just over 20 years ago at a school library book fair, and there's a reason this specific copy has survived countless trips in a backpack, numerous rereads, and half a dozen moves. Put simply, this book is incredibly important to me because of the effect it had on my life since I first read it. I would like to tell you about how Eragon is so much more than just a story between these dog-eared pages. Let's talk about the magic of the first stories that truly enrapture you and the power they have to change us. Hello, and welcome to Spirited Companion. I'm a big believer that some stories find you at the right time. It could just be that the brain is fantastic at taking story beats, emotions, and details from what we read and applying them to our current circumstances, but I'm willing to bet many of you know what I mean when I say this. One of the closest things we have to the feeling of real magic is when you encounter a story on a whim or a recommendation, only to find it so overwhelmingly resonant in your life. In the case of Eragon, that recommendation was from a thoughtful librarian at my school. I was a regular at the school library and frequent enjoyer of books like Del Toro Quest. It was hard to resist the allure of those gilded spines, a siren song for any fantasy-inclined preteen. I'd read The Hobbit by this point and knew truly the genre was one I enjoyed, and also dabbled in other classics like the heroic tales of Martin the Warrior and Redwall Abbey. On that fateful day, I remember queuing eagerly with my class for our turn to enter the book fair. Not to age myself here more than I already have, but the internet was in its infancy, and the thought of seeking out reviews or best of lists was so far from mind. I had expected the usual, a coveted Guinness World Records book, some spy gadgets, and maybe a new Star Wars novel. Then, a considerate librarian guided me towards this gorgeous tome. I doubt I'm alone in having a near photographic memory of this book's cover. The solid sapphire blue frame that ensures the gilded title Eragon shines, the solitary figure of Saphira, masterfully rendered by John Jude Palancar, familiar in ways but wholly unique in others. It's a drawing that I've attempted to sketch myself countless times, and I know I'm not alone on this. A friend once offhandedly remarked they could only draw dragons facing the left, and I instantly knew why. But it isn't just the cover that makes this book special, though that could be an entire video of its own. The next thing the librarian told me was that the book was written by a 15-year-old, and just like that, a world of possibilities opened up. I already had an inkling that I wanted to write, to create, but I'm 100% sure that learning about Christopher Paolini flipped a switch and created a dream that day. So, it's time to talk about Christopher Paolini. He wrote his first draft of Eragon by the time he was 15, and there's a parallel universe out there where Eragon, Saphira, Brom, and Arya never make it outside of obscurity. At the time, I didn't understand the absolute miracle that it was to have this book in my hands. So many things had to go right for this story to live the way it does. First, Christopher was born to writers, publishers, and storytellers. His real-life environment shaped the world Saphira would soon hatch into. It's easy to look at stories and see them as products of the influence of greats, but one interesting thing I keep finding is that stories often begin at home. For Frank Herbert, it was the Oregon dunes that would become Arrakis. For Robin Hobb, it was the Alaskan wilderness that would shape the Six Duchies of the Farseer trilogy. And for Christopher Paolini, it was the wilderness of his home state, Montana, that would shape Eragon's home. Once young Christopher had completed his manuscript, his family's publishing company self-published the story. His belief in the story led him across America to libraries and schools. Dressed in medieval costume, he was able to share his story with fellow readers, many of them nerdy kids like me who love to read and the idea that one day they may too share their stories. Even so, the book was not an instant hit, and Paolini himself said, "It was a very stressful experience. I couldn't have gone on for very much longer," when reflecting on those times. But like I said earlier, sometimes a story ends up in precisely the right hands at the right time. Eragon reached someone in publishing after another author's stepson found the story and loved it. The author took it to his publisher, and by 2003, Eragon was a bestseller. This little moment led to it being traditionally published and reaching the entire other side of the world at that little book fair that I was at. But why does this matter? Eragon is hardly unique in getting published and being read all over the world, and you'd be right to think that. But that's part of the magic of stories, and a cycle that Christopher Paolini is the result of and has now contributed to. In a piece titled Dragon Tales, Christopher Paolini reflects on his path to becoming a writer. One part of this really resounded with me. "I hate to read," cried the little boy obstinately. "I do not see why I have to learn this. I'm never going to use it." That's what I said nearly 15 years ago when Mum was teaching me how to read. Back then, I knew that reading wasn't part of my world, and I knew that it was just a waste of time. Mum was patient though, and carefully guided me until I could read simple words. And then she took me to a library. It's easy to write those words now, but they cannot convey how that single event changed my life. In the library, hidden in the children's section, was a series of short mystery novels. Attracted by their covers, I took one home and read it eagerly. I discovered another world, peopled with interesting characters, facing compelling situations. It's strange. Although I had strong interest in books and stories, it never occurred to me that I might actually be a professional writer one day. All I really wanted to do was share the epics floating around in my head with other people. Sound familiar? Eragon is a story about growing up. It's overly long, filled with the ups and downs of a journey worth going on. It's about loss and pain, perseverance and victory. It also clearly takes inspirations from the greats that came before, J.R.R. Tolkien, Ursula K. Le Guin, but of course it does. That too is part of growing up, emulating those you look up to, and then learning who you are from those pieces. No one emerges wholly unique in creation, in personality, and it takes time to develop your own identity. This is something Christopher honed and refined through the rest of the inheritance cycle to deliver an adventure beloved by many, myself included. For me, Eragon welcomed me into a genre, a world that wholly absorbed me. I know not for certain who I would be had I not read this story as I was going through late primary and into high school, anticipating each new huge book to enjoy as the series continued. I can definitely say that aspects of me would not be the same. My love of books led me to push into English studies, write stories of my own, pursue creative endeavours, and seek out new adventures that had a hand in shaping my present. And the true magic is that for so many people this story is the same, but with countless other stories discovered in unique and personal ways. The one thing that remains the same is that whatever that story was, it was a story. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of Spirited Companion. I want to use this channel to speak about books and stories of all kinds, what I find interesting, what they're about, and why they're important. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel, liking, or sharing this video. I'll see you again very soon.